Personal log of Commander Scarborough, head of Charlie Group, 5th Fleet. Under the orders from Admiral Gaius, Charlie Group is to rally support from the other fleets and ships, while also conducting rescue operations on my home planet. Realizing that there are several ships and smaller battle groups between the Eye of Terror and my family, I decided to repurpose the MTF Guard and send them to the capital of Raccoon City. To my then shame, but now relief, I had instructed the drones to prioritize my family and the families of any of my crew that they may be in need of assistance. We, as efficiently as possible, moved from ship to ship, but had little success gaining any help from any of said ships. They only seemed to delay me from getting to my family. Everyone was panicking, saying that they need to get home because of some crazy, random, unknown anomaly. Great, another one. They reported everything from a skyscraper-sized radioactive fire-breathing lizard to dancing toasters hell-bent on global domination. I've seen the videos, so I know they're not lying, but still, this is just crazy. How wrong I was, thinking at least my homeworld wouldn't be as bad as the one with the evil clowns in the sewers, reaching out to everybody, trying to coerce children and grab anyone who might be close. Finally, after way too long, I reached my homeworld, only to be greeted by the same distress signal that has been playing on repeat and the sight of fires raging unchecked across my world. I tried every channel, but nothing. It was then I remembered that I had sent the MTF Guard, establishing a link for a sit rep. They reported multiple life and unlife signs infesting the planet. Thinking to myself, what exactly is an unlife sign? I asked for clarification and was met with the answer of recently reanimated corpses of citizens who have been consumed by citizens. Huh? I don't even know what that means, but screw it, I'm going in. After repeated attempts to reach anyone without luck, I found what looked like a good landing location in the S-Mart shopping plaza. I laughed to myself, thinking out loud, if you're gonna shop smart, shop S-Mart, as I attempted to distract myself from the concern about my family as I gathered a strike team and raided the armory. Geared up, we loaded up into the dropships, and I was going home. It was standard atmospheric entry, so with the skies clear, we decided to do a slow flyby of the city. It was worse than I could have possibly imagined. We could see citizens shuffling around while others crawled when they could not possibly still be alive, not with the amount of injuries they had suffered. The streets, which were a cross between a war zone and a riot. As we approached the LZ, we observed the MTF Guard incinerating citizens with their plasma casters designed to cripple warships. Panicking as we landed, I saw one of the MTF Guard drones closing in on an injured child, so I quickly entered the automatic shutdown code, and the drones, planet-wide, fell to the ground as the doors opened up on our dropship. Our medic, Corporal Allen, with Private Williams, immediately rushed to the side of the child, who was now pinned down by the disabled drone. As they lifted and reached for the child, well, it had other ideas. The second it could move, the child wiggled free and jumped on Doc, removing his throat in one bite. Williams froze, but was quickly tackled to the ground by other citizens who we thought were dead. We all froze at this time as we watched our friends become an all-you-can-eat buffet as the dropships dusted off to return to the Douglas. We raised our disruptors and fired into the crowd, eating our friends, but they didn't seem to be affected. Shot after shot, but nothing. More injured citizens began to swarm us. We shouted orders for them to halt, but they just groaned and kept coming. We threatened, then begged for them to stop, but they kept coming. I gave the orders to open fire onto the crowd, but again the disruptors did nothing. They kept getting closer and closer, and I didn't know how we would survive, and then it hit me. The MTF Guard. As I desperately reached into my drop pouch to get the control module, one of the civilians, or not a civilian anymore, the monster dove into Leroy and Jenkins, bringing them down to the ground, only for them to be swarmed as they screamed as I went crashing hard into the side of an overturned van. Raising my weapons to fire in what I thought would be an attempt to save my friends, I felt my legs getting pulled out from under me and slammed even harder into the ground. I began to frantically kick at this fucking thing, trying to pull me into the van. What was left of my men were fighting for their lives, using the weapons as clubs, as I felt another set of hands grab my foot, and the first thing seemed to be gnawing on my boot as I was being slowly dragged in. If they eat me, I hope they choke on it, was all I thought. I remember thinking that as I pulled the controller and reactivated the MTF guard, laser focused, I entered the code. First Lieutenant Ferguson reached down and grabbed me, which scared the shit out of me, causing me to involuntarily jerk and twist, dropping the controller. I was pulled free for a moment of safety, but then realized that the controller was now broken. Well, shit, I said. Quickly scanning our rapidly deteriorating position, I gave the only order I could. On me, troopers! We are leaving! So we ran. We ran so far away, but couldn't get away. We needed to rest and gather ourselves, looking at what was left of my men. Out of breath, I said, "We need a plan. Let's hold up somewhere, put our heads together, and come up with something." Looking around my old hometown, I realized that I knew where we were, and I said, "Okay, there's a couple options. Looking at the windows of this place, it's full of unalive, but around the corner there's a sports bar, the Win, and a comedy club called the Chester. Both should be closed when this started, and both with security gates down should be like an impregnable fortress. With the horde closing in on us, it didn't matter which we chose. We just had to go, and go fast, because those things were gaining on us, and they would not stop. Keep moving, I yelled at them. Just up ahead, cut down the alley, and we're there. So close we can make it, I thought. Then we exited the alley, and both buildings were on fire, completely engulfed. I actually felt my heart fall out of my ass, knowing how screwed we were, when out of nowhere I could hear sirens. Then a police car came screaming through the walls of the flame and smoke, sliding sideways and only stopping inches, possibly millimeters from us, as the door swings open and we hear, "Get in!" No need to ask us twice, as we found room for us all to fit in as I said, "Oh shit! Nick! By the power of Grayskull, it's Sergeant Nicholas Angel, the guy who's been training me as an instructor before I joined the fleet." Nick looked at me and said, "I saw the ships land and go. At least someone made it." At that moment, I didn't care where we were going. Away from where we were was just good enough. But seeing the street signs, I suddenly remembered where I was and why I was there. I told Nick to immediately let me out, and to my surprise, he actually stopped. I was expecting some sort of speech or something to try and talk me out of it, but he just said, "Do your thing," and left me. I didn't have a plan, but I knew where I was, so I started walking, trying to avoid my once friends and neighbors and not get eaten by them. I did the dumbest thing I could have possibly done while trying to be very, very sneaky. I leaned against one of those expensive cars that those rich people drive, setting off the alarm, which rang the dinner bell, and I was very aware that I was the one on the menu. Hell, I was the menu. So I did the only thing I could do and ran into the nearest building. Nope, lobby's full, so up the stairs I go, down the hall, and oh, hell no. So down a different hall into the fire escape. Hey, they're coming up, and what a coincidence. So am I. The first door, nope. Second door, nope. Third door is locked, and presto, yep, the roof. The roof is on fire. Oh, just great. There was a bright side, though. One of the MTF car drones that was on the not-so-reinforced fire escape roof access sat there forcing itself on the shack, looking as though it's blocking those things from getting me. Looking around, I saw a second drone on the roof, which makes sense because I sent a bunch of them to protect my family. Probably explains the fire, too, now that I'm thinking of it. Wait a second. The MTF guard. The control is broken, but they have transmitters. Thinking of this, I immediately ran to the drone and ripped open the maintenance hatch and accessed the communications and sent a message to Admiral Gaius. As I turned from the drone, saying a silent prayer, a blinding white light appeared from nowhere, and the most badass and terrifying-looking being appeared and spoke. "Hi, I'm Chuck. Commander Scarborough, I presume?" Before I could even say anything, it looked around and then looked back and said, "Well, seems to me like you got yourself in a little bit of a pickle, and I guess I get to check something off my bucket list. Wait, no, 2 somethings." "What? Who and what are you?" I asked. "Is anyone else coming? Because if they are, we need to warn everybody." With a strange calmness in his eyes, Chuck turned and said, "Kiddo, listen, I'm the cavalry, and what you got here is something I've been dreaming of." He continues to look around the area. "Oh, cool. There's 2, so you can help too." At that point, Chuck raises both hands and closes his eyes and says, "Go, Gadget, Gundam." And then 2 MTF guard drones begin to shake wildly and then transform into robotic suits shaped just like this Chuck cowboy, hat and all. And then Chuck says, raising his hand, "All right, kiddo, suit up." "Okay, and you answered exactly none of my questions," I said. With a little bit more stern expression, Chuck said, "We'll have time for that later. For now, you know the way, and we've got something to do, right?" I immediately perked up, and inside the suit said, "Abso-fucking-lutely." We jump off the roof, and plasma cannons begin blasting from my arms. We begin stomping, kicking, and burning our way downtown, walking fast, faces to blast, and I'm homeward bound. Street after street, wave after wave of people I once called friends, neighbors, and oh wait, is that my wife's ex? Oh yeah. I decide to walk over as he's crawling across the ground, groaning in a way to climb over, perhaps to eat me. I raise up my metallic foot, slam it down, and squish. Then I look forward and say, "Almost there." I continue to move. Almost. I look and oh, shit. The house was surrounded. Thank the Forerunners, it doesn't look like they got in. We need to clear the area fast, but we can't use cannons this close to the house. So I looked around and then ripped the streetlight out of the ground and began to swing it wildly in the air to a "Hell yeah, good thinking, kiddo" from Chuck. We cleared the area in no time. With the area clear, I jumped out of the suit and ran to the door, knocking it in and yelling for my wife. I heard a faint "I'm here" from the back room and rushed in. I dropped to my knees as soon as I did and started crying. They have both been bitten, and my baby has already turned. I moved to her side and held them both. Weakly I said, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." I said this as Chuck walked in. He looked at the scene and said, "Well, shit. He is right, you know. It's going to be okay because I don't like this ending." At that point, Chuck raised his hand and touched both my wife and the child's forehead and simply said, "See? They're all better." I looked, and sure enough, they were. They looked like they hadn't been bitten. Nothing. I turned and said, "Wait, you can cure this?" Chuck said, "Yes, but I just... okay, yes." I said, "My son, was one of them, and he's fine now. You can fix this. You can save everybody. Wait, what about the ones outside? Truck replied, the ones still shuffling around? Yeah, but the other ones, not so much. I said, if you could save them, then why the hell did we slaughter half the fucking city? Chuck responded, look, that was freaking awesome. So don't pretend you didn't have fun. Besides, I'm not Space Jesus, but you're welcome, by the way. And I've got other places to be, so I'll see you around. Just like that, he disappeared in a blinding flash of light. The city was saved, and everybody who had turned into one of those things had been turned back to normal. The planet itself was devastated, with fires raging unchecked everywhere, and I don't even know where to begin. All I know is that if I ever see Chuck again, I really have to tell him thank you for saving me, and more importantly, saving my family. Now, I'm taking a bit of a break before I return to the Douglas and rejoin the 5th. Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on Chapter 4 of this ongoing series. Now before I go, I have to say that today's winner of the contest has been Douglas Scarborough. And I also need to send out some giant thank yous to the supporters of this stream, and those are Prozac and Pancakes, Sir, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Brian Kemp, Guardian Sage, Douglas Scarborough, Erica Gem, and Joseph Blosh. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.